Welcome to the show. I am on the road, and with me, not on the road, is my intrepid fellow traveler, Dancing Dan, the Dancing Man. How's everybody doing tonight? Hopefully, everybody's doing great. We got a bunch of people watching already, and I thought since I had to kind of schedule this in advance, that we would do a viewer questions show. So viewers ask away, and I'll give you like a house update that I forgot to give you last night on the counter clipping show. Which is that our buyer has contacted me and wants to close next week. So hopefully this will be the last bullshit on the road show that we have to do.
Look at Trevor Just. Let's go. Look, the show starts at 7:30. What's the matter with you?
We went 7:30 sharp, despite technical difficulties. The technical difficulties are now under control. Maybe I could have got the technical difficulties ironed out last time if I'd have tried some different shit, but that didn't happen. So
now it's Fucko is saying howdy Dan. Why is he singling me out?
Because he talks to me every week. That's why.
Oh, howdy Fucko.
I mean, he talks to you every week too, but I see him every week mostly. I saw him last week. We played OCS.
Oh, look at that! How did everything you wanted to know about war games and wanted to get started? How did it get started?
As always, it's Dan's fault. Dan came to me and said, "Hey, we should do a show together." I threw some ideas at him, and a very awkward name, and which in retrospect was a terrible idea. It sounds okay, but when you have to actually type that out on the cards and put it in the Twitter posts and all that, it's way too long. So this is what's that?
It was me who brought up the idea.
Yeah, it was you.
Oh.
And I think you suggested we alternate from week to week, too. Yes, I'm broadcasting live from Dan's trunk. We're at 7:30 Eastern time. I don't know what time it is where Doug is. So we do not, in fact, know. Tuning right in with viewer questions night is John Longshore. I do not, in fact, know where your remote is. I've got 3 extra televisions at home, and I don't know where any of the remotes are. So
John, you're from Canada, right, John?
No, he's from Michigan, which is like, almost Canada is Minnesota, and Michigan is almost Minnesota.
Hey, we got Tony of Tony's Board Life. Man, is he putting out a lot of videos? I swear to God,
he's trying to catch up with ID Jester, who has 2,700 videos. He showed that today on Facebook, and I'm like, God, I thought I had a lot of videos. Jesus.
I know. The guy, he shits videos.
That's a lot of videos. He does like 17 videos a day. That's how he does that.
God, he's doing Arkham Horror right now. Tony just put out Bitter Harvest.
And they're all 3.5 minutes long. This is actually true. Most Canadians do, in fact, live south, or at least adjacent to Michigan. So.
Oh, best World War II strategic game, Artie. Come on.
Best. We talked about this last night, and Andrew was there, so he knows what my answer is going to be. Best, different people are going to give you different answers. There we go, making the technical difficulties happen. Different people are going to do.
If he knows the answer.
He does the. Well, I had my answer last night because I did 2 hours plus actually on strategic level World War II games. My choice in that space is World in Flames. It's not a light game. Yes. Why is that a shock?
I didn't think you were a World in Flames kind of guy.
I thought you were funning me for a second. No, I love World in Flames. I think World in Flames strikes the best balance between detailed playability and options. It's kind of sandboxy, which I like. Sometimes you don't want sandboxy, but there's other games for that. I'm not going to say I'll refuse to play Rise and Decline of the Third Reich, for example.
And do you have all the expansions? World in Flames, this and that. They have like 18 different.
So when they did the classic line, I didn't really talk about this too much. They kind of streamlined the expansions. So they had caravans in flames and camels in flames and tankers in flames and Patton in flames and leaders in flames. Everything was on fire. So when they did the classic, they rolled a lot of those options from the various burning expansions into the core rules as options. And then they put out sort of 4 consolidated expansions. Ships in Planes, which just really adds more ships. Planes in Flames, which adds more planes, but also adds rules for pilots. Although I think those rules are in the classic. And then Territories in Flames, which adds a bunch of territorial stuff, and divisions, and because it's a core level game, so that game adds divisions. And then what was the last one? I just had it in my head. So I actually bought the classic version, which is just the core game, because I was terrified by the $300 price tag of the deluxe. But then over the course of, I don't know, a few months, I ended up ordering all the expansions as well. So I de facto have the deluxe, even though the box says classic. I didn't get the super deluxe, which includes all that stuff, plus like a couple of annuals, plus Patent in Flames and American Flames. I want to say American Flames is now out of print. That may be something to do with the big flood that they had down there. But it also includes Days of Decision 3, which I actually do need to get.
Now, is this, Artie, in your opinion, is this a well-researched game?
I mean, yes, but I'm saying that in the context of it's less about exact orders of battle and stuff like that, right? That's not where the research goes. The research went into things like the production models and stuff like that. If you want to see the fruits of a really well-researched game, then you're looking at a tactical or operational game more than anything else. Not to say it's not researched, but I mean, I'm happy with the level of simulation that it provides me to the extent that it is a simulation.
Well, does it compare to, in terms of research mechanics and all that, the TSWW type format?
Oh, I wouldn't make a comparison between TSWW and all. TSWW is at heart an operational game that nominally you'll eventually be able to play out all of World War II across the whole world. But it's fundamentally an operational game. World in Flames has some operational aspects to it, but it's more of a strategic game where you're controlling things like politics and production and things like that. You're really not getting that in at least in the TSWW games that we have so far.
And William Aarons, but what do you live in Guatemala, for God's sakes, man?
I thought he was vacationing there, but I could be wrong.
He's been there for 2 years.
Simulation or game? I lean toward. I'm about 60-40 simulation. Some of the games I do like are stronger games than they are simulations. GTS is an example. I think simulation value, it's fine, but it's really, really fun as a game. Something else like, I mean, this is a sliding scale, right, and not an on-off switch. So it's not like it's either a simulation or a game. Games always fall on some kind of continuum, with simulation at one end and game at the other end. And I tend to lean towards simulation, but I tend to like more complicated games, and those tend to be designed as simulations.
Hey, Roger Hemisath asked me a question.
Okay.
What war game does Dan play the most? Well,
that's Roger, a great question.
You're asking the wrong person the wrong question. I will be playing next. Point Blank. I just got it. I got my son-in-law a copy himself, and I think we're going to start getting into that stuff because it's a 2-player game. They do have a solo thing, and this is not an advert. I'm just saying I'm stoked to play this because we played Robin Hood, we played Normandy, Undaunted Normandy. So we're starting very, very Eurogamey, I guess. And
I certainly would not call that a Euro. I mean, if that's a Euro, up front's a Euro too. And it's already getting favorable comparisons with up front, by the way. It is a card game. I got mine yesterday in the mail 10 minutes before the stream started, so I haven't even looked at it yet.
I mean, Artie, I don't even talk to you about this game because I think you're far beyond these type of games in my mind. Maybe I'm assuming something, but since you're a monster gamer, you're way more into detailed games, and oh my God.
This is true, Dan, but we got to do something while the other guy's taking their 2 or 3 hour turn.
Jesus Christ.
Dan,
I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can do that.
I love that. We're going to play Atlantic Wall in February, and I can't wait to get back into playing Goss. I haven't played Goss in about 3, maybe 4 years, It's a very detailed system. It's a very challenging system, but I think it's got a lot going for it. I think there's a lot of simulation value there. So I'm very excited to get the chance to do that. But that said, for example, the movement phase in GOS, I mean, Atlantic Wall is a pretty big game, right? It's the biggest of the GOS games. But you start with maybe less on the map than you're going to end up having, right? Because the Allies are all still coming ashore, and the Germans haven't fully kind of mobilized the defense of Normandy yet. So even so, it's still a big game, and I'm guessing that we will take 2 hours plus to do the movement phase. It's got a very intricate movement phase where you have to move units in certain orders and stuff like that.
So it's team play. You're saying team play, right?
We are playing it as a 6-player game is the current plan.
Okay, no, well that's a little bit more fun because there's interaction between generals and all that, because I don't see myself moving for 3 hours or whatever, and then going back and playing another game, and then beep, 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 coming back. Okay, it's your move now. Another 3 hours. Hey, I got a life.
This has, on the one hand, it could be a pacing challenge to kind of keep yourself invested. But on the other hand, this is at a week-long convention, and we will be able to focus on that game and play, just focus on that for 13 hours a day was what I think we put in last time. And if I know it's going to take 2 or 3 hours, because I'm not driving there, staying at the hotel, I'll go take a nap, right? No problem with that. So go get something to eat, go take a nap, whatever. It's all good.
That's a good idea. I never thought about that.
Andrew Franke asks, whose name I keep mispronouncing because I keep reading it as a German name. Frankie.
It's Frankie.
That's Frankie. How long are turns in last Blitzkrieg? So in terms of like calendar time in the game, they're 1-day turns. So the first turn is December 18th. The second turn is, or is it the 16th? I think it's the 16th. And in terms of play time, I'd say that first turn took us 2 sessions. That sounds about right. So we got about, I'd say about 20 activations done over the space of about 6 hours. And we were looking a lot of stuff up. The second turn has moved quite a bit faster as everybody gets used to the game. Kostas Nikolaitis asks about 4X game recommendations. So I can give you a couple, but there's just not that much overlap between 4X games and war games. But I will recommend very strongly Space Empires 4X from GMT. That's a great game. There's also Conquest of Paradise from GMT, which has a lot of 4X elements. I would characterize it as a more historical 4X game.
Peloponnesian game.
What?
Am I right? No?
No?
No, it's Polynesian.
Polynesian. Oh, yeah, okay. Peloponnesian. I'm like, the ancient Greeks have nothing to do with this. And the Maori Warriors of the Long White Cloud is coming soon from Compass. That has a lot of 4X elements as well. And I've actually played that with the designer, Kevin McPartland, who's a great guy. And I liked the game, but I did play it back in the playtesting stage when it was still a little bit rough, but Kevin knew that at the time.
Hey, how difficult is that game? Paradise Lost. What's it called?
It does. Conquest of Paradise doesn't look very difficult. I haven't played it, but I like 4X games. Ed Holtzman says Distant Worlds 2. So I bought Distant Worlds 2 and ended up refunding it because it was severe performance problems at the time. I will end up, this is a video game, a PC game. I will end up picking it up again later at some point. And Toyo, one of our winners from last night, who should already be straightened out. Space Empires 4X is fun. Lots of great paperwork, too.
No, it's not a
I like paperwork in games. And I'm a natural-born accountant. But if you've played the predecessor game, Space Empires 4X plays a lot like the old metagaming and Avalon Hill title Stellar Conquest. And Space Empires has less paperwork than that. Now, any level of paperwork is going to bother some people, but it did not bug me.
Well, Anatolio, you sound Greek. You should be okay with paper. I don't know what that has to do with Greek and paper. I just came out of it.
I don't know. I don't know why we're talking about the Greeks all of a sudden. Christopher Press is getting that to the table for Christmas. That sounds fantastic. Now, Costas Nicolaitis sounds Greek, right? I could be wrong. Agre Day says Conquest of Paradise is not difficult. Trevor Just will be in Vegas, so the natural questions arise from that situation, I think. Matt Taylor says Eclipse. The problem with Eclipse is I can't actually find a copy. So there's a relatively new edition of Eclipse out, and it looks neat. I'd probably like it, but it's like $250, and I literally cannot find a copy. So it sounds like just like the last version of Eclipse, I won't actually ever get to play it anytime soon.
Artie, if I find a copy, I think my board game, my brick and mortar place, a small one here, actually has a French and an English copy.
Well, if they got it for like $49.99, maybe I'll have you buy it for me. But it's like $250. It's crazy expensive.
No, it was close to $100 Canadian the last time I saw it.
Well, that's like $10, so that's not that's not much of a big deal.
No.
So I'm trying to find the comment that I was looking for.
Yeah, buy complicated big games. Yes, you know what? I don't have the focus, I don't have the time, and I don't have the focus.
Well, Rebel Fury's not going to be a big, complicated game. It's going to be a full package. I think it's 4 or 5 battles. But they're all going to be using that C3I Gettysburg-Waterloo system. That's pretty easy to play. So I wouldn't be terribly concerned that it's going to be too big to manage. I'm thinking next year for that, but I think that the right way to ask that question is to ask Mark.
Tinagapisis.
I don't know what that means. I had that weird resonant Greek wine one time. It was interesting. I didn't hate it. So Retsina. So there's Dan disappearing again, thereby demonstrating hidden movement. So viewer question night is what we're doing tonight. If anybody didn't catch that at the beginning of the show or in the title card, it is in the title card. I had to set the stream up in advance because I was on the road. That is Close Encounters?
Yes, the expansion, though.
Okay. So one of the nice things about the Close Encounters expansion is sometimes expansions will tend to bloat the game, and I don't actually feel like that's the case with Close Encounters.
Oh, really? Eh?
Or Replicators, really. It's really just giving you lots more options.
Yeah, but does it make the game 10 hours longer?
I mean, it's a scenario-based game, so if you want to play a 10-hour game, you can, but you're not required to.
Yeah, American Tank Ace came out, and you know what? I'm sure it's gonna sell out real quick. I already put my. I called Jess. I said, "Save me a copy. Save me a copy."
I expect it to be a big hit. I talked to Mo, played it, and Mo loved it. So and Greg's really good at those kinds of games. So no, actually, this is a good question. I did an unboxing of the Epic of the Peloponnesian War. I think I filmed the unboxing months ago and released it weeks ago. I have not got it to the table yet. Beautiful Terry Leeds map. It's a really beautiful map. The counters are nice, but the map is outstanding. It looks like a very interesting game. So I'm looking forward to it. Perryville. No, I don't think I've played Perryville. I've played P Ridge, which is very good. This is the one from Herman Luttman's Blind Sword system. So there's news for those who haven't heard. There's a new Blind Swords game available to buy from Revolution Games. It's called A Greater Victory, and it is on the Battle of South Mountain. So I have that on the way at some point.
Who designed it?
I don't think it's a Herman Luttman design. It's Herman's series. It's Herman's system. But I think somebody else designed it. And I don't remember who that was off the top of my head.
It's not the guy who did the Kernstown?
It might be, because Herman's got like a whole team of people designing games for Blind Swords, which is great. I think mine is too, but I don't know exactly where it is. I want to say they ship via UPS, which means I'm not getting notifications on that. I got to actually go and track it myself if I want it tracked. So,
IG Critical saying Space Empires 4X is on BGA. What's BGA?
Board game assistant, I think, something like that. It's some kind of online tool for playing board games.
Hey, Dan Dolan.
Dan Dolan, welcome to the stream. I haven't seen you around too much lately. UPS's site is down. That's a big shock. I'm so shocked that couldn't be the case. There you go. Stigler is being put on retainer. There's something to that because he hardly, I mentioned several decision games last night, and he hardly complained about them at all. So you might be on to something here, John.
Yeah, you got to love Stigler. Even though you give him a couple of shots once in a while, you still have to love him.
This is very interesting. Steve Carey is apparently the designer of A Greater Victory from Revolution. And what I didn't remember, this is of course correct, is that he also did We Must Tell the Emperor by Victory Point Games. Now that's a States of Siege game on the war in the Pacific, and it's a pretty neat little States of Siege game, to be honest.
Steve Carey, isn't he an actor?
That's Steve. That's
Carell.
Steve, that's Steve Carell or Drew Carey, one of the two. So I'm not sure. Oh, Dan, I didn't know that was you. I had no idea. So Dan, welcome back to the stream, even though you're here all the time. So we love to have you here. Lee Grant.
What's about
a Quinn Flynn? Martin production?
Why is he saying True Phlegm?
Because he comes to these streams sometimes as the one true phlegm. That's what he's saying.
Oh,
that's interesting. So Malta Besieged, I assume, is the relatively recent release from Worthington. So Steve's been a busy little bee, hasn't he? There's Dan demonstrating hidden movement again. We really enjoy doing these live demonstrations for the viewers. I'd like to thank you all for watching. One of these days, Dan's going to do this again, just suddenly vanish, and I'm going to drop the stream and leave him hanging. What is the map you use for your background? Well, I'll give you a hint. It is not a game that ever released, but the maps and counters and even some boxes made it out into circulation before the game itself vanished into the mists of time. So you can, I'll open the floor to guesses as to what game I am talking about. You may, in fact, need to be one of the secret investors to be able to identify this map.
Hey, Charles, you got Malta Besieged? I have it, and you're giving it like 4 thumbs up, man.
Well, Charles likes it. So it's getting good press. So, very interesting. Trevor says that Steve just got his games back from VPG. I know that some of the rights to the States of Siege games, at least, and presumably a lot of the stuff from Victory Point Games got returned to the designers. I don't know any details or timetable on any of that, but I'm glad to see that the designers got their games back. It's not like Victory Point Games is really going to do much with most of those games, even though they were all big hits. Roger Hemseth, too bad I don't have a giveaway for you tonight, or I might give you a prize. But you are absolutely correct. The map that you see in the background is, in fact, a digital extract of the map from Total War. Thank you, John Longshore, for setting me up with those maps. So I want to say beautiful, but they're attractive maps inside the style of maps that they are. And they totally ruined the game because then they realized that we added all this terrain. This is my hypothesis. It's not like I talked to those guys, but that they added all this terrain to the maps and made the attack much more difficult because there's a bunch more defensive terrain. And they broke the ability of the Germans to actually have big breakthroughs in 1941. And then they realized, oh shit, we broke the game, and we already spent all your money, so we can't fix it now. So we got to try and fix that with a million rules, and they couldn't make it work. That's a hypothetical but plausible scenario as to why Total War never came out.
I was wondering why it smells like weed in my house. I trimmed my plants, and I got resin all over my hands.
Oh dear, resin from some plants.
Yeah.
So Mike Anthony says he thinks he has the paper version of the Total War maps around, and they're nice maps. I think they're nice maps. My kind of idea is actually to just build a game using those maps, because they're nice maps. So the terrain is not bullshit, right? It's terrain that was there. You just need a redesigned system, preferably one that's a little less bloated, to play on them, and I think you're all set, right? So this is true, but this is because I am in the car and I'm at the old house, and there's no lights or seats in the old house for me to do this from there. I mean, it is a shame. On the other hand, you could still run copies of Fire in the East down for not that much money. I know people talk about going for $300 or $400, but I got an unpunched copy of it in very nice condition off of eBay, which ain't the cheapest place to buy anything, for $160 plus shipping. So if you're patient, you can get a copy of Fire in the East at least, which is really all the Total War was going to replace, right? It's not like it was going to include all the way up to 1944. It was just going to be, I think it was going to go a little farther into 1942. But got wrong dates in the ticker. I can't fix it now. I actually offered to buy. I know a guy who's got a set of Total War counters, and I offered to buy him off of him, and he said no. But the counters, I wouldn't need the counters if I was going to design a game around it, because the first thing I would do is eliminate 3/4 of the counters. So now, yeah, exactly. This is exactly it. So Fire in the East you could get without absolutely killing yourself. Scorched Earth, on the other hand, I've never seen it go for less than $350 in the last year. On the other hand, as Michael Schmaus points out, there are plenty of successor games to those East Front games in particular, and to Europa specific, more generally, although nothing quite replicates the scale of playing the entire East Front out on 6 maps, right? There's a certain, as clumsy and often aggravating as it is to play, there's a certain grandeur to Europa that makes it still appeal to a small and slowly vanishing group of people. William Aarons, thank you so much. Much appreciated. Here in Guatemala, he found sheets of clear thin acetate for 10 quetzals, about 125 per sheet. It's a superior product for covering paper maps. That's very interesting. You know the millimeter thickness or mil thickness of that stuff? I'd be very curious.
Hey, talking about Malta besieged, here are the counters.
Are they like 2-inch counters?
Like, no, 1 inch. And they give you a counter tray. Like, what the hell? There's like 7 counters.
Good. That's good. That's good packaging. Good way to go, Worthington. I congratulate them for that. So if you read the GMT newsletters, there's about a monthly update on the blog for the Frank Chadwick's ETO series. And they talk about, where they are and aspects of the game and all that. So I haven't really been keeping up with that, but I would recommend that to anybody who is interested in that series. I believe forward progress is still being made. I am equally positive that progress has been less rapid than anybody would have liked. So, Iggy Krital is off to play ASL. Yeah, these are the large print edition counters. Are there blocks too?
Here?
Yeah, and Malta besieged.
No.
Okay.
I just punched out all the counters, all of them, right now.
So, Dan, do you mean like one type of die roll, or do you mean you roll the die once in playing the entire game? Because that wouldn't be a huge shock, to be honest. But that would make me as a designer say, if I'm rolling a die once for the entire game, maybe I need to just eliminate that die roll. Are there cards?
In what?
In Malta besieged.
Yeah, there's a deck of cards and even baggies.
Okay, for the 4 counters? Does every counter get its own baggie? And individually wrapped counters?
Yeah, and I think Grant sent me some stuff, man.
Good. So Mike Anthony
It's tobacco.
Says that, I'm sure it's tobacco.
Tobacco.
It's the wacky tobacco that he's got right there. The devil's lettuce. Mike Anthony says that it's being actively play tested, and I mean, there's pictures of that happening from Consum World. So Mike is absolutely right here. And John Longshore says that his impression is that Thunder in the East Second Edition will be pretty much a different game. I think that's a bit overstated, but there's going to be lots of fairly small changes, new cards, changes to the cards, stuff like that. All the mechanics are going to stay the same.
Hey, by the way, I'm going to be interviewing Matt Culkin of Sekigahara and Charioteer fame.
Yeah, tell him to send me some money. That'd be cool. Mike Anthony mentions this is also true, that they're working on the entire series at once now, as opposed to just the original plan, which was to do Thunder in the East and then do the Mediterranean and then do the next one and then do the next one. They're actually working on the entire series at the same time. So that is the big reason for the delays. I forgot to check the October 1st P500s. I don't think I had any. But I could be wrong. So GMT is awesome at reducing my wallet down to a nub. So I haven't heard anything. I think I heard on the stream last night somebody said that they have cleared their customs issue with the new stuff. So all that stuff that got delayed at the beginning of September should now be making its way into the pipeline. William Aaron says it's about as thick as a sheet of poster board. So one thing I've seen people do is instead of using plexi, they use like this thin roll of sort of thick, sort of rubbery plastic. I don't know if it's polyethylene or polypropylene or what. I don't like that because it bunches. So if this is a rigid sheet, then I think that sounds great. If it's too flexible, though, that creates just as many problems as playing on a paper map. This is neat. If you've seen the and somewhere on the blog site, there's pictures of this where they actually worked out all the map projections and table space required and stuff like that. There's a whole blog post about it, and it's pretty cool. That's a project that I know they want to take their time and get it right, and I think that's laudable. So, but as a consequence, I kind of lost track of it because I'm like, every once in a while I kind of check in. It's like, any news? Ain't getting released yet. So I'll check back in 6 months and figure it out. Jeff Baylor, welcome back to the stream. It does look like a very interesting and ambitious series, and I would like to play it. We had a crack at Thunder in the East last year or the year before, and we messed a lot of stuff up. So we wanted to give it another test drive at some point.
I'm going to be playing this game. You know what?
Good. Is it solitaire or two-player?
Solitaire.
All right, and it's which Siege of Malta?
Something 1940-42.
Is it?
The George Cross, Malta by King George, the sixth.
Isn't there a date on the cover of the box?
For God's sakes, man!
I thought it was like
1942.
1942. Okay, because Malta's been invaded several times. I mean, there was even nominally a siege in 1799 or late 1798, but it only lasted like a day or two.
What do they call people from Malta? Greeks?
Maltese. Like the Maltese Falcon.
I get you.
So this is true, but Europa does this too, right? It's not by hex side, it's by hex, but you got to you can only attack if you're in like a mountain hex, for example, you can only attack, or in a mountain, you're a defender's in a mountain hex, you can only attack with a certain number of units from an adjacent hex. So this is not typical, but it's not that weird. I've seen similar things before. Now that they have invented transparent aluminum, you'll have to check on that. So
what?
They have invented transparent aluminum.
What are you talking about?
Transparent aluminum. Haven't you ever seen Star Trek 4?
No.
Okay, well, in there they have transparent aluminum. They build the tank to hold the whales out of transparent aluminum.
I thought it was glass.
No, it's transparent aluminum. There's a whole shtick about that where Scotty's at the plant saying, we really need transparent aluminum for this. And he gives the guy the formula, and McCoy pulls him out. It's like, you can't do that. Why not? How do we know he didn't invent the thing?
I don't remember it.
This sounds very good. I'd be very curious to find a domestic source for something like this. On the other hand, you could buy poster frames, just take the acetate sheet out of the poster frames, and that's probably not too much thicker than what you're talking about, and it's definitely rigid.
Yeah.
We should be getting a GMT update before too long.
We just got one today.
Oh, we did?
Yeah, concerning late shipping.
Oh, that stuff. Yeah, I heard about that. I just talked about that. This is the one I'm thinking of, actually, is this 1565 Siege of Malta. Maltese Falcon is great. You know, there's two Maltese Falcon movies, but the one with the one that everybody knows about with Humphrey Bogart and Peter Lorre, that's a really great movie. This is a great question. Dan, do you have any extra whales? Well, you know, Compass has Invasion Malta coming as well from Vance von Boris, and I think that's a title. I think that's the title that GMT ended up dropping from P500 some time ago. So I'm glad it was able to land somewhere. I always like to see that land somewhere if it gets dropped at GMT or whoever, right? Yeah, so I'll be at Compass Expo. I got the time off approved today. And in part thanks to the fine folks last night who helped out big time on the last night's stream. I think budget-wise, I think it's going to work as well. So I mean, I'd have made it work if it couldn't, but it's really nice to have the help. So don't forget to thumbs up the channel and subscribe to this channel and Dan's channel and all the channels. So support the channel.
If Artie has a con next year, I might drop by with a case of 2-4 or something.
There you go. Well, 2-4. You mean like 4-2 beer? Is that a thing in Canada? Because I've never seen that. I'm not quite old enough. I mean, I remember it being mentioned, but I'm not old enough to remember it ever being for sale. It was like some kind of reduced alcohol beer that you could buy when you were 18 as opposed to 21.
A 2-4.
4-2 beer. I don't know why it was called 4-2 beer. So I did invade Malta in our War in the Desert game successfully too, but it was very costly in terms of victory points. I don't think it was decisive in terms of victory points. Jeff Baylor mentions Yukon in Ypsilanti this weekend. If you'd like to brave the 0 degrees Celsius Michigan morning. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know all the kids' lingo that they're using these days.
Spoken like a true Canadian.
I remember pouring out a 40 on the curb, but I don't yet remember 2-4.
Why would you pour a 40 on the curb?
I don't know. I just
remember
that being a thing. And in tribute to Tupac or somebody like that, I don't know.
Jesus Christ.
It's one of those fun colloquialisms. This is excellent. Monkey Shoulder is a highly drinkable blended scotch, not too expensive. I prefer Johnny Walker Black over Monkey Shoulder because I think it's more interesting. But Monkey Shoulder is very good.
I'm actually going to be drinking some American Swill.
There you go. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's actually Canadian too now.
Oh, they're brewing their own piss in Canada too.
No, most
that's depressing.
They're in cahoots. They joined cahoots.
I thought Canadians had good beer. What are you drinking that stuff for?
I think this is commercial crap.
Yeah, I know. I'd rather not drink beer than drink that shit.
You know what? It tickles the tongue.
Oh, it does tickle the tongue. You know what else tickles the tongue? Herpes.
Hookers and blow.
So it's a nice bottle. I mean, I'm never going to buy scotch for the bottle, though. Frankly, I enjoy good gin and tonic and a good martini.
Yeah.
Martini's a tricky drink. You got to use good stuff for a martini, but gin and tonics are very forgiving. You can use very inexpensive gin and a
Yeah,
gin and
yeah.
tonic, and
But you
it's
got to
fine.
use good tonic. You got to use
You,
good
you
tonic.
actually do benefit. It is a lot better with good tonic. That's true. And you got to have lime. You can't make it without lime. It's like a completely different drink without the lime.
God, I want a gin and tonic now.
But a martini is basically straight booze, right?
I
So
just
you got to
love
have good. You got to have good booze.
I love a martini. Man.
I like Bombay Sapphire or Hendrix for a gin martini, and Grey Goose for a vodka martini.
We actually have Quebec has some award-winning gin here, which there's one called Gin Tuya, but actually it's from New Brunswick. Tuya is it's a plant that's a little bit sapin. What do you say, sapin? Evergreen, just a tad bit, and it smells a little, and it tastes a little bit like spruce.
Well, that sounds interesting. We have something that's even better down here. It's called Scope.
Jesus Christ!
I'm just saying. I mean, all gin. I mean, the one flavor, the one botanical that you have to put in gin is juniper berries, right? And juniper berries give it that piney taste, which I like. But I mean, I'm not drinking straight gin out of a Glencairn either.
Scope. That's ridiculous.
I've heard that the botanist is good. For gin and tonic specifically, Beefeater is very good. I think Hendrix or even regular Bombay is fine, but I think Bombay Sapphire is a little too good to put in a gin and tonic. I wouldn't really use Hendrix either. The botanist I've heard is good, but I haven't tried it.
You're cheap.
And Tanqueray makes an excellent gin and tonic.
Yes,
actually, it's very juniper forward, and you want that for a gin and tonic.
You got it, baby.
Crown Royal, peach Crown Royal. I'd be curious to taste peach Crown Royal because I like peach, but I'm not curious enough to go buy a bottle of it.
No, a great day. No.
I mean, that is Canadian whiskey. What are you people doing to whiskey up there?
No, it's the American influence.
Oh, okay. You blame the Americans. Always blame the Americans for your crappy, cheap, cloying Canadian whiskey.
Cinnamon whiskey. It's like, what are you joking?
Well, but dude, that's our fault. That's not Crown. They might have a cinnamon Crown.
Never tried Aviator.
I haven't either. It's supposed to be good. Isn't that Ryan Reynolds gin?
Nice bottle.
Yeah, I suppose so. I'm not a huge fan of Maker's Mark. It's okay, but I feel like it's more expensive than it ought to be. I think you can get a good bourbon that's just as good for like $10 less a bottle.
Maker's Mark.
That doesn't sound great, but I'd give it a shot. Remember that they used to have that was a rum ration. Never mind. Rum buggery on the lash. That's what the Royal Navy used to have. So, yes, apparently the Aviator is Ryan Reynolds' personal gin brand.
Oh, I didn't know that. No, I don't want to buy it now.
I like Ryan Reynolds. I think he's funny and charming.
I love Ryan Reynolds. Yes, he is very charming, and he satisfies my homosexual tendencies. But I don't want to go into that.
Well, I'm glad that you're comfortable with that. I mean, very glad. So,
Iced tea and peach Crown Royal.
Iced tea and
Stop it! I'm gonna puke my brains out.
I don't actually think this would be a good use for peach Crown Royal. Now, again, I would not. I've actually heard the peach Crown Royal is actually okay, but you're not unless you're a nut. You're not going to drink it neat out of a Glencairn, right? You're going to put it in a cocktail or something, and mixing it with iced tea, I think is actually a really good idea.
Give it to me. I'll snort it.
So I've heard this too. I saw the little spoof thing that they did. I don't know if this is real news or if they're just bullshitting people. So we used to say that if you get a fine dice bag and a free bottle of whiskey with it. So, and then you throw the whiskey down the drain.
Yeah, now you got to pay for the bag.
Not separate. I mean, you were paying for the bag before, but it's not separate from the bottle of booze.
Now it's.
I think I bought it. Somebody. I think I saw a YouTube review of the Crown Rye, and so I bought a bottle of it to try it, and it's okay, but I wouldn't use it. I'd use it in a cocktail. I wouldn't use it if I was making a Manhattans or old fashions or something, but I wouldn't drink it straight. It's not that good.
I'm not a rye drinker. It doesn't
I
work.
love rye.
It's too dry. It's
my whiskey preference basically goes at the top is Scotch, right before that is American rye, right under that is Irish whiskey, right under that is bourbon, and right at the bottom is Canadian whiskey. Now, I don't say that because I think all Canadian whiskey is terrible, but I don't. There are, in fact, very good Canadian whiskeys, and I could tell you, ask Mo what the good Canadian whiskey is, because I don't know what it is. But he gave me a good Canadian whiskey, and it was very good.
Mo's a Crown Royal man.
I don't know. This was not Crown Royal, because Crown Royal is shit. So, but something he brought to Cups Expo last year was very good. And I'm driving this year, or riding, as the case may be, and I'll be able to bring a bottle of Scotch. And we have we actually are on topic, because there was viewer questions, and people are asking questions, and we're answering them, and it's all good. So. Now, a bunch of people have recommended various Canadian whiskeys to me that are supposed to be good, but then I run into the problem where I live in Ohio and I can't get any of that stuff. So,
right, William, you're right 100%. It's a morning whiskey.
So we bought this one when we went camping. We bought this bottle of French single malt whiskey called Bastille. And none of us were crazy about it, and it was a struggle to complete that bottle. And we ended up referring to it as, you got any of that French prison whiskey?
Just mix it.
It's a mix through filtered through an old sock. Now, my issue with Canadian is actually that I just don't know enough about Canadian whiskey. I will tell you that unlike American rye whiskey, which needs to be made with at least 51% rye in the mash bill, that's not true of Canadian whiskey. So a lot of the allegedly rye whiskeys that you see labeled as Canadian whiskeys are just some bullshit. And there might be like 6% rye in the mash bill. And I don't want to deal with that. I'd like to have 100% rye whiskey, because I love rye. So,
Carl.
Last time I bought a bottle of Black Velvet, I needed a fake ID to do so.
You know what? The Black Velvet, my mother used to give it to me when I had a sore tooth, when I was like teething.
Yeah, that's because it's like poison. Yeah, she was trying to poison you, Dan. She was like, I can't take this little fucker anymore. I'm going to poison him. So yes and no. The state has granted a lot in the last 20 or 30 years. The state has granted a lot of licenses. So the answer is legally yes. But what you will see in practice is a state liquor store located inside, say, a grocery store. But if you go buy booze from that liquor store inside the grocery store, you are actually buying it from the state of Ohio. You're not buying it from Kroger.
Carl from the War Game Boot Camp. He says he likes Mountain Dew with nothing. Carl, if you were 6'4" and 100 pounds heavier than me, I'd punch you right in the knee. I swear to God.
I don't like alcohol in my Mountain Dew. I've never successfully made anything that tasted like anything other than total garbage.
Don't drink Mountain Dew. Do heroin. It's better.
Some of the yes, but and I'll lose weight faster. That'd be cool. Some of the people I used to camp with would have this drinking strategy where they would basically buy a case of Everclear and whatever 2-gallon bottles of and some miscellaneous mixing things like Captain Morgan and stuff like that. And they would buy these 2-gallon jugs of Mountain Dew, not Mountain Dew, but Gatorade. And then they would basically drink like a third of the tub of Gatorade, and they would just pour random shit, including Everclear, into the 2-gallon jug. So it was portable because they had handles you'd carry it around. There were mixed results. Somewhat surprisingly, occasionally there was something good that came out of that mysterious mad science experiment. But usually it was absolutely horrific. But the plus side was that you were less dehydrated because it was all mixed with Gatorade.
Okay, good. That's a good thing.
I don't think this isn't called smuggling anymore. This is just called Goodbye Cincinnati, Hello Kentucky.
Hey, Artie.
So,
Why? I just saw a YouTube video. Why are there border patrols in between states?
I don't know. I'd have to look into the scenario in which that's the
I
case.
couldn't believe it.
That sounds like a violation of the Constitution's
It is a
Interstate
violation of the
Commerce Clause, if you
Constitution.
ask me. But I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, check it out.
Charles Lenny, welcome back. Says he'll stick to McAllen or Glenlivet. I love
Sure,
McAllen. Glenlivet's not too expensive, but at least the Glenlivet 12, the regular Glenlivet. But I feel like the McAllen regular expression is harder to find than it should be because of demand, and consequently, it's about $30 more than it should be because of demand. So I don't really buy McAllen anymore, even though I like it quite a bit. I think it's one of the best heavily sherried whiskeys. Just don't buy the American Oak bullshit non-age statement stuff, because who knows what's even in
my
that.
opinion on McAllen, if you buy the regular standard stuff, all I taste is the off flavors, which is rubber. I taste rubber. But I have a rich friend who comes over once in a while. We do a Scotch tasting night, and he brought over a $500 bottle of McAllen, and it was some of the best Scotch I've ever had in my life.
I've had McAllen 25, and this was before the prices totally went bananas on it. At the time, it was about $30 a pour. So this is 25 or 30 years ago.
How was that?
Oh, it was really good.
Yeah,
it was really good. Now that's like a $2,500 bottle of booze. So I've actually never had Redbreast. I'd like to try it. That is an Irish whiskey. What operational game system does the best job of integrating air power into ground combat? Well, not Europa. I actually think the Third World War system from originally from GDW with the new big fancy release from Compass does a really good job. I mean, it's presupposing that you want a modern or pseudo-modern model, but I think it does a really good job of having an integrated air system that's interesting, that has an interesting set of decisions to make, and isn't particularly abstract, without also being a giant pain in the nuts to play, like the Europa air system, which is just a dumpster fire. Yes, but it's got caffeine in it. Oh, Jägermeister. Oh, my God.
No.
Oh, my God.
No.
What Amish guy? Who we talking? Are you talking about Carl?
I'm talking about Carl.
Okay. I have the beard of an Amish person, so I sympathize.
Carl.
Kilroy says you lose more weight with meth. I'll defer to your experience on that.
There he goes. Kilroy just trying to. I don't know what he's trying to do, but he did it.
There is speaking of this, Agray Day says that when he was in Ireland in the late '90s, all the nightclubs had Red Bull and drinks. So I've ordered a vodka and Red Bull at a bar at like a club. This is a long time too, because hey, I don't want to go to sleep. Right? There's all this fun happening. More recently, I have seen Sheetz. Anybody that lives in Pennsylvania will be intimately familiar with Sheetz. Sheetz actually has Red Bull milkshakes.
That's disgusting.
Possibly is not tasty, but it'll keep you awake, won't it? I despise honeyed whiskey. I can't stand it. I think it tastes disgusting. I don't like it at all. There's people that like it. That's great. Drink it. You can have it. I don't want it. And I'm not a big fan of Jack Daniels either, for much the same reason as Maker's Mark is. I think it costs about $10 or $15 more than I think it should, based on how good it is. You're paying for the brand in that case.
It's a good morning bourbon.
It's not terrible, but I think it's more expensive. I'd rather drink Jim Beam because Jim Beam is just as good and it's cheaper. So
it doesn't have the charcoaly taste that Jack Daniels have.
It doesn't. That's true. That's because Jack Daniels is a Tennessee whiskey, which is a subtype of bourbon. By the way, people will get in arguments about that and they say it's not bourbon, it's Tennessee whiskey. Tennessee whiskey is bourbon. It meets all the legal requirements of bourbon, except that I believe it's filtered an extra time and they run it through charcoal. And that's what gives Tennessee whiskey its kind of distinctive character beyond what you normally get out of bourbon.
Christopher Prest, Delirium Tremens. Yes, that's a good beer. Belgian, that is.
So it's my considered opinion that the best beer in the world is made by Belgians.
You know what? There is no such thing as the best beer in the world.
No,
Come to
there isn't,
Quebec.
but I'm talking in aggregate. I think the Belgians make
Come
really
on.
uniformly really good beer.
Just come to Quebec.
That's Belgian style beer, though. If you get Unibrew beer, almost everything they make is Belgian style beers.
Talk to the hand.
So, and everything from Unibrew is excellent, just so we're clear. But it's all Belgian style beers.
Okay.
Magbraxis MF says the last encounter with Everclear was in college and involved a giant watermelon that leaked and took the finish off the coffee table. That's because it is in fact paint thinner. Dangerous stuff to monkey with if you don't know what you're doing. I've never had Teacher's Highland Cream. I wouldn't mind trying it, but I'm not curious enough to go buy a bottle of it if I could even get that in Ohio. So this is interesting. I have this discussion with my wife kind of regularly because we'll go to restaurants and they'll have Pepsi products, and she hates Pepsi products, and I don't drink cola. So I just don't like cola. But the Diet Pepsi tastes absolutely poisonous. I do not like it. I drink diet. I drink the soda I drink. I don't drink that much soda. I have a couple sodas a week. I drink Diet Mountain Dew because it's got caffeine in it and it doesn't taste too bad. So, but I don't like the taste of Pepsi products in general. Mountain Dew is a Pepsi product. So it's like we go to a restaurant and, we have Pepsi products. Would you like some Diet Pepsi? And my wife's like, oh my God, I'll take the water. And then she'll complain about the water, but she's usually not wrong about that either. So there you go, Dan. How many people have you met in Canada playing Hex Encounter war games?
What's the matter with you? What's the matter with you?
I mean, there's all those people at Stack Academy, right?
Yeah, what's the matter with that guy?
Jeff Bealer also votes for Third World War's air system. Now, I do like the air system in OCS, but it is very much a sideshow for the land game. Air power is much more significant in Third World War, as you'd expect it to be for a game in the 1980s versus the 1940s, right? So, OCS is in many ways, there's even hints of this in the rule book itself, is in many ways an answer to Europa that fixes all of the perceived problems with Europa at the time, right? With that monstrously bloated air system, with the dysfunctional scale. And I think it's generally a much more effective vehicle for gaming. Charles Lenny asks if there's a Discord. There is a Discord. Right now it is open to patrons, so the link to the patron page is in the video description. And once you are a patron, I don't kick anybody off. I'm not policing that, so you're pretty much a lifetime member of the Discord. It's not super active. I want to make it public, but then there's challenges involved in that because then I'll get bozos in there with spam and all that stuff, and I don't know that I want to deal with that. And it just kind of keeps getting pushed back as a thing that I want to do. There's other stuff that are more important. Honey weed. That's probably not great either. I used to like eating at Sheetz, actually. They used to have quite good hot dogs, and that changed. They went to super duper cheap hot dogs, and they taste like shit.
They call themselves Sheetz, and they serve food.
Sheetz.
Let's go to Sheetz.
It is a mainstay of your life experience if you live in Pennsylvania. They're everywhere. We've got some in Ohio, too. There's a couple here in Columbus, and there's a couple in Akron. Caramel peanut butter milkshake. So first of all, there is a peanut butter whiskey, which is another one of those things that I'm curious to try, but not curious enough to go buy a $20 bottle of it. And it is absolutely valid to put bourbon in your milkshake. There's nothing wrong with that. That sounds like just a good idea. Roger's more interested in World War II systems. So solid air system, World War II system. So there's plenty of like dedicated air games, and I'd point to like the RAF or Burning Blue if you're interested specifically in the Battle of Britain. But a lot of the land game World War II games abstract air out pretty heavily. Like Goss, for example, just has points. You have air points. You allocate them to different types of missions, and that's it. OCS has a significantly more detailed air system, and I don't think looking at that is a bad idea. I'm trying a lot of the games that I've played over the last 10 years or so are games with quite abstract air systems where it's just like a die roll modifier that you apply in a specific combat, and then you have a certain number of those a turn. You might look at the GMT East Front series. That's got approximately as detailed, maybe a little more detailed air system than OCS does. So bourbons have to be made in America, and this is the American legal definition of bourbon. They must be
corn.
They must be made from at least 51% corn. The other 49% can be whatever. And they must be aged in new charred oak barrels for a minimum of, I believe, 18 months or 2 years. What?
Artie, you ever have a shot of bourbon and then have a beer?
Probably.
You're going to taste corn right away, and it's a beautiful thing.
Huh. Okay.
It really is nice.
There are corn whiskeys that are very corn forward. Stillhouse is very corn forward. It's actually kind of neat to drink for that reason.
You could send me a bottle.
Now, Scotch must be made and bottled in Scotland. It must be, if it is a single malt Scotch, it must be made entirely from malted barley. And it can only come from a single distillery. Otherwise, it's some kind of blended Scotch. And it must be aged for a minimum of 4 years
I did not know that.
in oak. But it does not have to be new oak. That's the thing. The bourbon makers cannot reuse the barrels. They fill it once, they empty the barrel goes off to Scotland.
Yeah, exactly.
And the Scotch people use it to age Scotch in. That's literally what happens, and they get cut up for people to put plants in. That's literally what happens to old bourbon barrels. Now, blended Scotch can contain, it must have a certain amount of grain whiskey, which is not, in Scotch terms, there's malt whiskey made from malted barley and grain whiskey made from corn, wheat, whatever, spelt, rye. It's all over the place. It's mostly corn because corn's the cheapest. But most blended Scotches are roughly 50 or 60% grain whiskey. Grain whiskeys are distilled in, can be distilled anyhow they want, but they're typically distilled in column stills, whereas malt whiskeys are distilled, this is again Scotch, are distilled in pot stills. They must be distilled in pot stills. Grain whiskey, nobody cares, but column stills are more effective or more efficient.
Ask Artie that you should have a query on Google. Ask Artie.
I did a show about Scotch, actually, and it didn't really got okay views, but it was below average for the counterclipping stream. Let me put it that way.
Hey, Artie,
Mike Anthony prefers the raw chemical taste of Diet Coke.
That's disgusting. Artie, we're past our time here.
We're past our time here. I want to make sure there's no super duper urge. I'm way behind on this because I was sitting here scrolling on this bitch on my phone. So, Kilroy, you missed it. I am calling from the old house remotely, except I got it actually working this time. So let me just go to the bottom.
Talking about like sherry casks and all port casks and all that. You know that in Canada, obviously, marijuana is legal, right?
I assume so. Everything is legal in Canada, as far as I'm aware.
So they make hash also, and they store it in port barrels.
So there's actually a lot of beer makers that are now experimenting with aging in bourbon barrels or Scotch barrels.
Oh yeah.
And in some cases, because it's perfectly fine to do this in Scotland for Scotch, some of the Scotch distilleries are doing things like cast finished in an ale barrel of some kind. I haven't tried any of that, but I have had the bourbon barrel beers, and I generally have liked what I've had of them.
Artie, there's a microbrewery called Saint Ambroise here, okay, and they have one bottle of beer that they sell for $5, and it comes in a tube and all that, and it's got the year on it. And
it comes in a tube like toothpaste?
No, the bottle comes in a tube.
Okay.
Like a Scotch bottle.
Well, that sounds fancy.
Yeah, $5. And it's got the year on it, and it's a beer that's been left in a whiskey barrel. And I tell you, I had a 5-year-old one once, and it was tremendous. Tremendous.
Now, it's possible to overage beer. It's possible to overage whiskey too, but it takes longer.
Yeah, it's 18% alcohol.
There you go. Certain types of beer take age well, and certain types of beer don't take age well, and it's not necessarily intuitive. I had a 120-minute IPA from Dogfish Head in Delaware, and boy, was it good. So I set the second bottle in the pantry and let it sit in the pantry for 6 months, might have been a year, and busted it open. And I figured this beer will age very well in the bottle. No, it did not. In the time it was sitting around, all the hops had died, and it was like unfermented wort. It was terrible.
Like shit.
It was terrible. I wasn't getting poisoned, but I was like, man, this was wonderful when I had it the first time, and now it's garbage. This is a damn shame.
Hey, William, I'll see you in Ontario, huh?
All right, William, thanks, and have a very good night. I would like to thank everybody for tuning in this night for random viewer questions, which we kind of usually get to, and random talk about booze and hookers and blow and the usual stuff like that. So everybody have a great night, and we'll be back next week on Dan's channel, and hopefully I won't have to be a homeless vagabond on my phone again.